What happens when one of Donald Trump's most loyal defenders walks into a tough interview expecting a routine conversation, only to find themselves struggling to explain the very promises they've spent years defending? Well, that's exactly what we're about to watch unfold. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In today's video, we're taking a closer look at an interview featuring Donald Trump ally Carla Sands. And let's just say things do not go according to plan. As the questions become more direct and the pressure starts to build, we're going to see a series of moments where the talking points begin to crack. The explanations become harder to maintain and the contradictions become impossible to ignore. Now, to be fair, defending any political figure in a live interview can be challenging. But the real problem emerges when you're asked to defend promises that were made publicly, repeatedly, and on camera. At that point, there's nowhere to hide. The interviewer doesn't need to invent criticisms. All they have to do is quote the original promises and compare them to reality. And that's where this conversation becomes fascinating. Throughout this interview, Carla Sands is repeatedly confronted with questions about campaign promises, economic claims, trade deals, foreign policy, and transparency issues. Instead of providing clear answers, what follows is a series of defenses, explanations, and attempts to reframe the discussion that often leave her on increasingly shaky ground. The more the interviewer presses, the more uncomfortable the exchange becomes. And by the end, you're left with a larger question. What happens when political messaging collides with real-world results? So let's watch the full exchange together, break down the key moments. And then at the end I'll give you my thoughts on what this interview reveals about the growing challenge facing some of Donald Trump's most vocal supporters.
Let's talk about all of that and more with Ambassador Carla Sands, former member of Donald Trump's Economic Advisory Council, former US Ambassador to Denmark, to Greenland and to the Faroe Islands. Ambassador, very good afternoon to you. Thank you for coming on. Let's start, shall we, with those reports that the President Trump had to be quite strongly talked out of firing Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve. Why on earth would he want to fire Mr. Powell, and do you think he should do?
Well, I think that President Trump is looking at our debt payments and the fact that we're accumulating debt every quarter. We're borrowing, I think it's every 100 days, about $1 trillion more. It's on an unsustainable trajectory. The American people on both sides of the aisle are very wary of this. They want the debt handled and they want less government spending. So if we look at what he's trying to do, he's trying to lower the interest rates so that our debt payments are lower, because it's accumulating so fast because of the high rate that the Fed has set. If you look at what UK has done, or the European Central Bank, they've been lowering their rates. So the debt is lower in anything you service in abroad, UK or the European Central Bank. He's asking for some relief so that the American people can afford to buy a house, because right now, because of the debt rate that Jerome Powell has set, mortgage rates are at, I think it's a 30-year high. It may be longer.
So he's apparently written a letter sacking Mr. Powell. He's been waving it around to all sorts of Republican politicians. It sounds like, Ambassador, you think he would be justified in sending that letter.
Well, so what I think is that Jerome Powell should lower the interest rates, like our friends and cousins across the pond have done. And then people will be able to afford to buy a house again, to get a mortgage, to buy a car on credit, and to service our debt.
That interest rates would come down if inflation came down. Inflation since President Trump took office had gone up.
The inflation is almost nothing. It's just several.
It's not if you've seen your groceries go up under a president.
No, they've gone down.
Inflation has gone up.
Prices have gone down. Like eggs are much cheaper. Maybe, I don't know, more than a couple of dollars cheaper a dozen.
Eggs might be, Ambassador, but the cost of living across the board, inflation, CPI, is up under President Trump despite his promises to bring it down.
Just a tiny bit, but remember, this is still Joe Biden's economy we're living in. President Trump has not even been in office for 6 months, so he's working to implement his policies. Gas prices have come down since he's been elected. People are feeling wealthier. The least the least educated people with the lowest income, their incomes are actually raising higher, faster than any other groups, faster than inflation. So they're finding some relief early on. But this is going to take time. And as a matter of fact, I think he's justified in asking for the interest rates to come down. Let's not forget, Jerome Powell has been so political that he was lowering the interest rates whenever Joe Biden had an election or there was a Democrat election opportunity in the midterms or the presidential.
You can't put all the blame and the burden on Joe Biden. Since Donald Trump took office, inflation is up, unemployment is up, and growth is down. For the first few months, economically, it's been a disaster.
So it hasn't been a disaster. As a matter of fact, billions of dollars have come into the United States because of the tariffs. This year, we'll have
paid by American companies.
That's not true. It's mostly paid by the foreigners. No, it's very little inflation in the U.S. It's just a little over 2% right now. It's not true.
Of course, so tariffs on imports are paid by U.S. companies.
Generally not. Generally, it's the foreign country, and that's why he's putting tariffs in place. Why do you think that he's been so upset about the tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers that have been excluding American goods and punishing American exporters going to places like the UK and the EU? For instance, the US, we charged 2.5% historically on European cars. They charged us 10%. And then there was the big VAT tax, the 20% on top of that, where every state in the US has a much lower state sales tax, much lower. So I think that what you'll see is our economy, like look at the stock market. It's not the economy, but it's a good sign of business confidence and investor confidence. But what President Trump is focused on is Main Street, that the working people get some relief. And you will see that within this calendar year.
Let me ask you about some of the other promises that he made. Ending the war in Ukraine on day one. How's that going?
It's tougher. He didn't say, so he maybe said day one once or twice. Mostly he said that's going to be a harder.
He said it dozens of times, Ambassador. Come on. He said it dozens of times. We will end the war on day one. Okay. I am, because I've got to correct you on that. We will end the war on day one. Let me just correct the record.
He also said that this was going to be a harder war to win than the Israel-Hamas war. So he did say it was going to be a harder war to end than that war.
He still promised to end it on day one, though, didn't he? And he hasn't.
Regarding Hamas. So he is working on ending this. I will just say this. President Trump was the only world leader that picked up the phone and tried to get to a peace deal. President Biden and the top Europeans
Ambassador, you'll be with
not working
the promise wasn't I will pick up the phone and try. The promise was I will end the war on day one.
He is working on.
But that's not the promise. You accept it's a broken promise. It's a broken promise.
It's not a broken promise.
How is it not a broken promise? He said, I will end the war on day one. And we're now on day, what are we on, 100 and something?
So
and
I thought you were the host. I didn't know this was a debate. I'm sorry.
It's a conversation.
But as a matter of fact, President Trump is working to end this war.
Yes.
His team is working tirelessly to end this war. And what has happened, they thought that they had a ceasefire deal in place. President Vladimir Putin, he retreated over and over. We saw Zelensky. He has incentives to enrich himself from this war.
But these are excuses. There's
not a great trade on either side.
A promise was made. A promise wasn't kept. Let's return to the economy. Donald Trump, we will strike 90 deals in 90 days. Trade deals, this is. How many has he struck?
Well, he's doing great trade deals. He's done one with the UK, thankfully, that we're very thrilled about that. India's soon to come. Indonesia's completed. EU is tough. I mean, the EU, we have former Prime Minister of Denmark, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, who's working on the trade deal, saying, well, we need to punish the U.S. That's not a way to get to a good trade deal to say we're going to be punitive.
He signed 2 deals. He said he would sign 90 in 90 days. We're well past 90 days. He's done 2.
Scott Bessent and his team and the
it's another
US
broken promise.
Trade representative, they're working on it very hard. Listen, things take longer than they should.
So why did he promise?
But the good news is it's a work in progress. Rather than attack what hasn't gotten accomplished yet, even though it's in the works, I wish that the UK would work on doing some of the things that President Trump is doing, following his lead of bringing down the costs for the people of the UK, bringing down the cost of energy, the cost of food.
Ambassador,
when I look and see that you've lost GDP in the last year, that actually the UK the economy is shrinking. It's a tragedy and a disaster. We need our allies to be strong, to be prosperous.
To be fair, we are one of the two countries that has done a trade deal with Donald Trump.
Prosperous.
Let me just ask, if we could, about one final promise. We will release the Epstein files, Donald Trump, before the election. Have a listen to this. It's Donald Trump yesterday.
I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going.
Why won't he release all the files like he promised to?
I don't know that it's under his power, and I don't know that it's under Pam Bondi's power. I know she said she had the
president of the United States. He doesn't have the power to release some files?
I know. I hear it may be actually under the control of attorneys in the court of New York. If that's true, then they should release it. Pam Bondi should release what she should. The American people on both sides of the aisle are very upset that there hasn't been more transparency around this issue.
Donald Trump just said no one cares.
And was doing. I think some of us do care.
He's wrong to say that. He's wrong to dismiss it.
I think he's getting bad advice in this case, and I think that there will be more information that comes out. There must be an intelligence community reason that this isn't being released. Okay. Because certainly Pam Bondi said she had the list on her desk.
Just on that clip, finally, Ambassador, I think you're telling me he's wrong to dismiss it as boring and say nobody's interested in it.
Well, and he may be getting advice that this is something that there may be things that cannot be released to the public. That's what I'm thinking. And I wish he would just tell us if that's so.
But is it boring? Is it boring, this issue? Do you find it boring?
I think he's energized
of hundreds of people. Is that boring?
He's energized about rebuilding the economy. He's focused on the big things. This isn't a big thing. The economy, our security.
It's not a big thing. Child abuse of hundreds, if not thousands of children isn't a big thing.
If you look at the country as a whole of people being safe, being prosperous, it is not the main thing. No. And the president
it's only
has only
potentially
so much
thousands of children. I can't believe this, Ambassador. Because it's potentially only thousands of children that were abused by a prolific, notorious sex offender. It's not a big deal for most people.
Listen, these were young women.
Do you realise how offensive that is to those to his victims?
We're offended. No, women and men do not like this story at all. But as a matter of fact, it is, I'm sorry to say this, it's a distraction from the main thing, keeping the country safe, making sure that the country is economically successful, bringing together the whole of government for our country. It is a distraction.
His victims' calls for justice, his victims' demands that the public is made aware of who was helping Epstein cover up his crimes is a distraction. Seriously.
Listen, I agree with you. I think that there should be whatever can be disclosed should be disclosed. However, I will say this. It is a distraction from the main thing. The U.S. president should never have to say another word about this.
Well, he wouldn't if he released the files.
He has the whole country and literally the world on his shoulders.
Take inflation, for example. At one point, she suggested inflation was practically non-existent. But that simply doesn't match the broader economic reality that Americans have experienced. While some specific items have become cheaper, many families are still dealing with prices that remain significantly higher than they were just a few years ago. Then there was the discussion about tariffs. Supporters often point to tariff revenue as evidence that the policy is working, but critics argue that a significant portion of those costs ultimately make their way through the supply chain and can end up affecting businesses and consumers domestically. Again, whether you support tariffs or oppose them, that's a legitimate debate. But it's a debate that becomes much harder when political surrogates try to present complicated economic issues as if they're completely one-sided. Then we got to the trade deals. Remember, the promise wasn't a handful of deals. The promise was dozens and dozens of deals within a very specific time frame. When you set expectations that high, people are naturally going to measure results against those expectations. That's not unfair. That's accountability. And perhaps the most uncomfortable part of the entire interview came when the discussion turned to the Epstein files. Because this wasn't an issue that opponents invented. This was an issue that generated enormous attention during the campaign. Expectations were raised. Promises were discussed. Supporters were told transparency would come. So when those expectations aren't met, questions are going to follow. That's inevitable. And once again, Carla Sands found herself trying to defend a position that was created by someone else's promises. That's really the theme of this entire interview. Over and over again, she wasn't defending achievements. She was defending expectations. She wasn't defending results. She was defending statements. And that's a much harder argument to make. At the end of the day, this exchange serves as a reminder that words matter. Campaign promises matter. Public statements matter. Because eventually, somebody is going to pull out the receipts. And when that happens, political allies are left trying to explain why what was promised doesn't quite match what actually happened. That's exactly what we watched unfold here. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Do you think Carla Sands handled this interview well under pressure? Or do you think the interviewer exposed some major weaknesses in the arguments she was making? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.